By the time you're watching this video, it may already be too late. So hurry down to Kickstarter and see what picks we have for you for the week of October 28th, 2019. We're going to start off by taking a journey with Creative Games Studio with their new Kickstarter, Chronicles of Drunagor, Age of Darkness. This is a dungeon crawl game with a few twists to make it stand out from the rest. This does have a sort of medieval fantasy theme, but first off has 3D platforms. So there's actually going to be an elevation issue, and you'll be actually using these little 3D stands to put the pieces on top of, which you'll be ascending or descending depending on what you're doing, maybe even crossing some bridges. The next thing, there are doors. Like in other games, but the doors actually fold open and they'll tell you what's in the next room. So it'll tell you what doors to use, or maybe random, so that adds a bit more interesting intrigue. And finally, some of the board pieces will have maybe a statue on there, in which you'll actually look into a book, which will have a picture of the statue, and with like, look at the head, or look at the inscription on the base. So there's a bit more of like a choose your own adventure and trying to find out different descriptions there. There is, of course, a leveling up mechanic, and you can either do standalone or campaign style. And your hero can use different equipment and stuff, and there's also creeping darkness, but really I think it's those things I mentioned before which make it sort of stand out from just many of the other dungeon crawls we see on Kickstarter, or maybe the very popular ones that already are in existence on board game shelves.
There sure are a lot of them, aren't there?
I mean, it's a classic. It's your D&D, but you don't have to make the story. It's right there for you.
No, I thought this one looked really cool too.
It is very pretty as well.
Yeah, the art is nice. All the things that you mentioned are all like, those are really cool ideas. Love the doors, love looking at a book. That reminded me almost of like the Seventh Continent, kind of, where you're like looking at a picture and trying to, I want to examine this, and then I want to examine this, and what will that do for me?
Yeah, the book idea I think is really cool because one, the way the actions work, it's you put cubes of different colors depending on the actions, but when you gain them back from like whatever their rest action is, you actually put corruption down. You can also get more corruption along the way, which means you have to be really careful with your choices.
Yeah.
So you can't just explore the entire thing. I think you have to be a bit more careful, especially because there are different roles and they say there's synergy. There's actually even a skill tree I forgot to mention for the heroes and stuff, which is really cool. So I think that all these, they're little things, but they're enough that I think it makes it sound really interesting. $99, I mean, take a look. It has 3D stands and minis. You're going to have to pay a bit of high price, but it seems like it's going to be worth it.
Corvus Belli has yet another dungeon crawler for us, Infinity Defiance, which is a part of their Infinity universe. This is a big dungeon crawler miniatures game with full metal miniatures that they are very proud of. Definitely part of the appeal of this one. You are a bunch of people gathered together to try to stop alien invaders. You're doing combat with them, and you'll go to different locations, including possibly the alien mothership. And it's another campaign game, so you will play through it fully cooperatively. And something that's interesting about this one, I think, is the AI system. There are a series of decks with cards so that when it's the enemy's turn, you just draw one of their cards and that tells you what action that they take. Something that's sometimes appreciated. I think they're trying to simplify how the enemies work in games like this. Otherwise, on your turn, you'll be moving around. You'll be rolling dice that have different symbols on them in order to attack and advance and progress, get new equipment and items, etc. This is one that I think looks like it's probably a good game, and obviously there's people really like these minis and the other games they put out before.
Yeah, isn't that like a mini war game?
I think it's like I said, in that universe. I don't know if there's how much more the narratives interweave or anything like that. It seemed cool, and like I said, if you like those minis, it comes with a bunch of them, and they're metal, and you like assemble them. They're unpainted, but they're really high quality. I think that's a big reason a lot of people back these games. And I apologize to everyone for all these. We keep week after week recommending these $100 campaign mini games, and it's a lot, but I thought it was worth mentioning because it's also been really successful.
I mean, I think part of our Kickstarter Pickstarter is to try to get a variety of times that either catch our eye or like, oh, I think this would be great for if you are into dungeon crawl. I mean, like my first pick, like I said, I think because of those weird changes they made, I think this is something to take a look at. Even if you already have like Descent, I think, which is probably one of the biggest dungeon crawls I can think of off the top of my head.
Yeah. So take a look at Infinity Defiance. It's $111 for that core game.
Galilean Moons is our next pick. This takes place around Jupiter, hence Galilean Moons. And you are all mining companies trying to control the different moons, get resources, and have the most points by the time the deck refreshes 3 times. This is a territory control game where the way the game works is there are 4 moons, and you actually will distribute icons randomly to each of the different territories. Now, the reason those icons are important is because the card decks can match the certain territories. You can only use the green cards to invade either a green territory or to mine the green gems from a green territory. So the board is territory, but it'll shift depending on which game. So one game, maybe a lot of the green and red are near each other, but another game they're not. So that also changes up what cards are useful, when they're useful. Of course, there's invading, but even if you build up bases and stuff, you're not completely safe. So I feel like it's a fun sort of mix on the territory control game. It's a little hard to just wall off areas, and there's not always that Australia. I think a lot of people always joke of like overstrong because depending on where those tiles land up randomly in the beginning can really change up how the game works.
Yeah, I took a look at this one too, and I thought it looked pretty neat. It's like a nice kind of on the smaller side comparatively, and not too like heavily thematic or anything, but with a nice layer of an interesting, cool art style I liked. And yeah, I thought it seemed like a cool one.
Yeah, I mean, if you're interested in territory control, take a look at this. It goes for $45, and see if you want to take a trip to Jupiter.
Council of Verona is being put out by Bread and Circuses. This is the 3rd edition of the game, but I have never played either of the other 2 editions, so this is new to me and maybe to you as well. It's based in the world of Romeo and Juliet, and players are trying to exert the most influence over who is or isn't allowed into the council and who gets exiled. And the way it works basically is there are going to be cards with different characters on them, and you are placing these discs face down onto them to try to influence them, and they have numbers on them that will add up to a score once the end of the game comes. And each character has their own special agenda, so they might want certain things to happen, and if those things are triggered, then at the end of the game, you reveal their tokens and you see what their total points were, who had the most influence, etc. There's also like maybe you have a token that is a poison token, and you put that, and if someone else doesn't put an antidote on it, then that character will die, and it doesn't matter if they completed their agenda or not. And of course, Romeo and Juliet are in there, and they're trying to get together, so there's that kind of thing going on. This one has all new artwork compared to the other 2 editions, and it also has player screens in it, so now you can hide your stuff better. I think that was something people wanted really badly. The game was featured, like it's been on Tabletop before and some other stuff, but I wasn't familiar with it. But it sounded like a cool idea, and it's small, and it's cheap. So that might be something that you're interested in. It only goes for $20, so yeah, I don't know. I don't think you've played this before.
No, I have not, though I think we have seen our fair share of Juliet and the Romeo in everything.
yeah, it's time for them to come back for a 3rd time in the world of board games. Check it out. It's Council of Verona.
Ronin of the Reach from Nerd Tank Games is a space fighting game where you will take your ship and you'll have a hand of cards, each with their own unique abilities, which either counter or get countered by other cards in opponent hands. You can only play these cards one at a time, so you sort of want to be careful which cards you play and try to know what cards your opponents have or haven't played so you know how to attack them. The little twist here is this is a dexterity game. Your ship on the board you'll flick it around to move it around, and you'll take damage should you collide into other debris or asteroids. So the whole idea is you not only need to make sure your card placement management, but also how to exactly flick your little card ship across the board. You can play up to 6 people, and there's actually also a mode of teams and even like having giant flagships that are on the board. So I thought that this is worth taking a look at, mostly because dexterity games, I mean, they can be very hit or miss, but I think they're always just something interesting to take a look at the very least, because you don't see them nearly as often, I think.
Yeah, I think it's fun when games try to use dexterity in a different way. It's not just Jenga, like they throw it in this different kind of innovative mechanic. I think that's cool.
Yeah. And I think there is an expansion too they have on there to go up to 8 players, so you can have just everyone trying to flick their cards around. And it's not that expensive either, only $24. I mean, it's mostly I think they're like a bunch of cards. This isn't like tiles, I think, which is where we usually see flicking. So if you want to flick around in space, maybe take a look at this.
Hey Robot is our last pick this week from Everybody House Games. A really interesting, weird concept here. It's a party game where there is a grid of cards. Each card has a word on it. Not too dissimilar from Codenames, kind of looks like that. And players are picking a word, but instead of trying to get a teammate to guess it, they're trying to get an electronic AI device to say it. So this game requires the use of either an Amazon Echo or a Google Home, one of those types of things. And for instance, the first example they give is if the word is giraffe. Your goal is to ask Siri or Google or whoever it may be a question that you think will result in them saying the word that is on the card. And if you get them to do that, then your team gets points and you get closer to winning. And that's really all it is. Very, very simple, but I thought it was a funny idea that uses modern technology in an interesting way.
No, that does sound fun, but is there like a taboo thing, like you can't ask it? Like,
I don't think so. You can be as creative as you want, but I think in some of the examples that they show,
you just can't use the actual word, I guess?
You can't use the actual word.
Okay.
So like, it may not be as easy as you think it is in your head. Like it might come up with a news result that doesn't give you the thing you want. It's interesting because, it also, there may or may not be like a shelf life on this game because as these AIs develop, they change and, how you play it today might not be the same as a year from now.
Right. I'm just curious because I like your example of giraffe. I was already thinking like, okay, could I say like, what animal is Joffrey the mascot or something? Like, so if I'm
Jeffrey, Joffrey's Game of Thrones. He should be their mascot.
I'm curious, like, that because it'd be interesting also to be taboo style for some of those cards because like there's some things that might be a little bit more obvious, and then you have to be more creative if you could add that.
Maybe there are. I think they did reference taboo as like an influence, so maybe there is a rule that I didn't read into that adds that. But like in their example, the person asks, "What is a long-necked mammal?" Like from this, and they came up with like a completely different thing. So, I think you might be able to get tripped up that way. Interesting stuff. Give it a look. It goes for $30, and it's called Hey Robot.
Those are our picks for this week. Some bit more heavy dungeon crawlers, as well as some more lighter casual games. We also want to mention Gem Blenders, a game we did a Kickstarter preview for. You can check out our video. We'll have a link down below as well. And let us know if you're backing any of these games. Are you excited for another dungeon crawl? Or maybe trying to ask Siri what she thinks of the game you're currently playing.
Yeah, talk to us in that comment section down below. And stay tuned if you're watching this day comes out before Halloween. We will be streaming some fun stuff on our channel Halloween night. So
and of course, stay tuned. Extra Life is coming up next month, and we will be doing something a little bit later on in the month.
So thanks for watching. My name is Jonathan.
I'm Will.
This is Roll for Crit.
Support our Patreon, like this video, and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss a thing.
Watch more of our content now to hold back Cthulhu's madness.